Ladies and gentlemen, some lessons come dressed in uniforms, others wear suits, but the most powerful ones, they show up in overalls, mopping the floors beneath our ambition, quietly watching, quietly waiting. Today, I want to share with you a story that will challenge the way you see people, the way you measure value, and the way you define leadership. It's the story of a billionaire CEO, a crisis, a missing translator, and a janitor who changed everything. The story begins 45 floors above the streets of Manhattan, in a pristine glass office that seemed to hover above the skyline. A CEO respected, refined, and running on edge was moments away from finalizing a $200 million contract with a prestigious Chinese delegation. This wasn't just another business transaction. This was legacy, future, and reputation wrapped into a single moment. Every second ticked like thunder as the weight of an entire empire rested on the smooth translation of every word in that room. Then it happened. 15 minutes before the meeting, the translator called off. No delay, no standby, just gone. The executive team scrambled. Phone calls flew, assistants panicked. The CEO, who could command boardrooms, silence rivals, and move markets, suddenly found himself powerless. No deal could be struck without language, and no one in the room could bridge the gap. In that moment, titles meant nothing. Experience, education, status, all silenced by one simple barrier: understanding. Crisis, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't care who you are on paper. It doesn't recognize your accomplishments. It doesn't bow to your wealth or titles. What it does is strip you bare and ask, who are you when control is gone? Who are you when there's no applause? Just then, a janitor, the quiet man who polished the floors each evening, stepped forward. He spoke Mandarin fluently, calmly, clearly, with respect and confidence. He didn't boast, he just offered what was needed, and in that moment he became the most valuable man in the room. Character doesn't rise when things go well. It reveals itself when everything falls apart. The CEO had built towers, but it was the janitor's strength that held the deal together. Because in the end, it's not always power that saves you. Sometimes, it's humility wrapped in quiet strength. Respect has no rank. It isn't stitched into a title or written on a doorplate. It lives in the quiet strength of character, in the discipline of unseen effort, and in the courage to speak when silence is expected. The boardroom was tense. The CEO was barking down the phone, sweat on his brow, pressure in his voice. Millions hung in the balance. The Chinese delegation had arrived, but the translator, his bridge to the deal, had vanished. A room full of executives stood frozen, and then from the corner came a voice no one expected. "Excuse me, I speak Mandarin." It was Jasmine, a janitor, young, black, invisible. Until now, there was a beat of silence, then laughter. Not because it was funny, but because discomfort often disguises itself in mockery. People laughed because they couldn't fathom that someone they overlooked every day had the very thing they all desperately needed. But Jasmine had more than language. She had layers. A graduate of one of the world's top universities, she had once dreamt of being in that boardroom for different reasons. Life, however, had different plans. Circumstances had forced her into a uniform they thought defined her worth. But she never stopped learning. For 3 years, she cleaned offices and observed minds. She memorized strategy documents while mopping floors. She studied failure and success in real time. She prepared, silently, so when her moment came, she didn't blink. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't need a badge to validate her. She simply stood up, because she was ready. Respect doesn't rise with a title. It rises when character meets opportunity. And Jasmine, she didn't just translate a language, she translated a truth, that power doesn't always wear a suit, and brilliance doesn't always sit at the table. Sometimes it sweeps the floor. Excellence is built in the shadows, not in the spotlight, not on the stage, not when the crowd is cheering your name, but in the quiet moments when no one is watching and no one cares. It's formed in the silence, in the overlooked corners of life, where ambition whispers louder than applause ever could. While others sought promotions and praise, Jasmine worked in silence. She didn't just clean floors, she studied the battlefield. The office hallways became her training ground, the late night shifts her classroom. She was invisible to most, but not to herself. She knew who she was becoming, and every mop stroke was a step closer to the woman no one expected, but everyone would one day remember. While executives sat in conference rooms talking mergers and markets, Jasmine was memorizing their language. She watched their mouths, listened to their patterns, and studied the way they wielded power through words. While they passed her by mid-sentence, talking over her like she was a shadow on the wall, she repeated Mandarin phrases under her breath, line by line, word by word. Each syllable practiced in private became a brick in the foundation of her future. She didn't have flashcards or tutors, just a borrowed dictionary and relentless willpower. And while the world saw a mop in her hand, Jasmine knew better. She was holding something far greater: discipline, focus, and a dream too big to speak aloud. She didn't need validation. She didn't wait for someone to hand her an opportunity, because true excellence isn't born in applause. It's born in rejection. It's forged when you keep showing up, keep grinding, and keep preparing, even when the world tells you that you're just the help. By the time Jasmine walked into that boardroom, borrowed suit, borrowed heels, borrowed time, she was ready. Every quiet hour in the dark had prepared her for the light. As Jasmine flawlessly translated the nuances of culture, tone, and diplomacy, something began to shift in the room. Every pause she bridged, every idiom she decoded, every subtle gesture she mirrored. It was more than communication, it was mastery. But beneath the surface, something even deeper was being translated: perception. The delegation didn't just hear words, they felt understood. They saw competence, they saw someone who belonged. And that's when the discomfort began. One executive, someone used to holding the spotlight, watched with growing unease. Maybe it was insecurity, maybe it was the quiet sting of prejudice. Either way, he couldn't help himself. With a smirk and a calculated tone, he exposed Jasmine's past role in the company as a janitor. As if that disqualified her, as if resilience was something to be ashamed of. He thought he was putting her in her place. What he didn't realize was, she already knew who she was. Jasmine didn't flinch. She stood there, still and calm, her silence more powerful than their titles. Then she spoke, not with bitterness, but with boldness. She told the delegation that her journey wasn't a weakness. It was a testament to hard work, to persistence, to the very ideals the company claimed to represent. She didn't defend her past, she honored it. Still, you could feel it, doubt circling the room like a silent fog. Cultural expectations collided with corporate posturing. Some questioned whether she fit the image, but truth has a peculiar strength. It doesn't argue, it doesn't shout, it just is, and eventually it rises. That day, the real translation wasn't language, it was vision, because bias left unchecked blinds even the best leaders, and it almost cost that company the one thing they couldn't afford to lose: credibility. Invisible doesn't mean powerless. The story doesn't end in that meeting room because Jasmine wasn't done. She had been underestimated for too long, but not unnoticed, at least not by herself. For 3 years she watched. Quiet, unassuming, but always present. She listened when people thought she couldn't understand. She read documents they assumed she wouldn't care about. She memorized names, timelines, discrepancies. She kept a mental archive of every shortcut taken, every unethical corner cut, every moment someone thought no one was paying attention. She didn't record out of vengeance. She documented out of principle. She didn't chase power. She earned influence. And when the opportunity presented itself, she didn't shout. She didn't storm in. She simply showed up with value. She offered insight others couldn't. She helped fix what others broke. And as her credibility grew, so did the offers. Consulting roles, advisory seats, partnerships. And then came the reckoning. The same voices that once laughed at her accent were now stumbling over their own lies under investigation. The same hands that dismissed her presence were now trying to shake hers, desperate for cover, but Jasmine didn't retaliate, she didn't humiliate, she just presented facts, calm, unshaken, bulletproof. She became the trusted voice not because she demanded it, but because she had proven it. She didn't burn the building down, she rewired it, quietly, thoroughly, with precision and grace. She reminded everyone that power is not loud, it's prepared. That leadership is not given, it's built in silence. that the one you overlook might be the one destined to reshape everything. You don't need a title to speak truth. You don't need a business card to drive change. Sometimes, the one sweeping the floor is the one preparing to take the throne. And when they do, you'll remember Jasmine.